Hey guys, and welcome back to Talking with Shadows, the conversation everyone has, but no one wants to admit to. Here with your host, Vic Whaley.
And Marcus D. And welcome to our 20th episode of our podcast.
Holy crud, are we seriously all the way to 20th episode?
We are 20 episodes in.
I feel like we didn't start all that long ago.
No, we didn't. And, 20 episodes later, we are so happy that you guys are still with us listening. And to celebrate our 20th episode, we decided to bring another guest onto the studio. So joining us today in the studio is our good friend Charles. Say hello to everybody, Charles.
Good evening, everybody.
And Charles, would you mind telling us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I'm Native American. Actually, Lakota is what we like to be called. Everybody else would call us Native American or Indian. I am from the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation. It's a pretty awesome place. Kind of miss it. But, I enjoy being here in the city as well.
And you're going to be telling us a little bit about some of the strangest you experienced growing up back on the reservation, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yes. So, we actually met Charles through work. Now, those of you who know that we work at a, in mental health, no, he's not one of our patients. Charles is one of our coworkers. So.
I could be one of the patients, let's be honest.
I think we could all fall into that bracket.
I mean, have you met me?
Yeah. Well, it's always so funny, when you're into the paranormal, and everybody wants to be our friend at work, and they're like, can you be friends with you? And it turns into that John Mulaney meme where he's like, okay, but we're all gonna have to get real cool about a lot of things real quick. And for most people at our work, they kind of now know that we're into the paranormal, but new coworkers don't know how deep me and Vic are into the paranormal.
Oh yeah, and when we first started doing this, we kept it real secret at work.
Yeah, real hush hush. And so with Charles, occasionally we'd be talking and then something would slip out, then he would know something about Bigfoot or spirits or ghosts, and we're like, oh, this guy's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I mean, first of all, I am Lakota, so we are pretty cool to begin with.
That is true. That is true. You were telling me the only Native American tribe not to lose a battle to the U.S. government?
Pretty much, yeah. The United States Army.
Well, the United States Army, yeah. Awesome.
I mean, there's one that you could say, but I mean, that's more of a massacre than anything. So I think they want to sweep that one under the rug, though. They're like, we fought some women and children. Let's not do that. Let's focus on UFOs and stuff. Yay.
Yeah, it wasn't even all that long that they renamed, or all that long ago they renamed it from a battle to a massacre. Wasn't it only in the last 30 years?
30 years or so.
Well, I mean, if you look at any of the U.S. history books, it still says battle. So I think we're the only ones that call it a massacre.
Well, anybody that listens to our channel knows how much language is important when it comes to a lot of things. So yeah. So, to celebrate our 20th episode, we decided we'd also partake in some refreshments today. We always tell you guys what we're drinking when we drink something. We picked up some Bud Limes. I am going with a Bud Light Orange today.
I am drinking Bud Light Lime because I am cool.
I got the Bud Light Orange, but also I wanted to point out, you said Bud Limes?
Yeah.
Wait, hold on. Where the hell did we get Bud Limes?
Yeah, you said that we were all drinking Bud Limes, and you're drinking Bud Lime Orange.
Oh, I meant Bud Light. I'm sorry. Well, I haven't had anything to drink. First off, I just got off work. Thank you very much.
That's
you two
true.
have had the day off.
That's true. I'll give you some slack.
Thank you. Me talking about language is important. Here I am tripping up over my words.
Cheers, guys.
And cheers to all of our fans to our 20th episode. Cheers.
Cheers.
Yeah, that's pretty good. I like anything with lime in it.
I love orange.
Actually, one of my favorite drinks is a gin and tonic with a lot of lime juice, or a kamikaze with extra lime juice. But I'm pretty happy with about anything with lime in it.
I accidentally discovered Bud Light Orange because when I do comedy and stuff, I always would drink Bud Light Lime. And one day they just didn't have any, and they're like, "What else do you got?" And they're like, Bud Light Orange, and I'm like, "I'm gonna try that," and then I've been hooked on it ever since.
If you like Bud Light Orange, I would recommend Shock Top.
That sounds awesome.
Delicious. Especially if you get it at the bar, they put a little orange slice in there. So when you finish the beer at the bottom, you take a bite of the orange slice, and it's like beer-infused oranges.
Okay,
which I can get behind. You know, if someone would sell those at the store in the produce aisle, I'll definitely go buy some.
Sweet. All right. I think it's about time to get started in our episode. Now,
yeah.
Normally we do where we would talk about comments from our previous videos. However, as we're recording this, we're actually recording this about 2 days after we just released our Black Stickman video. So we wanted to give you guys a few more days to, if you guys like to comment on that, for us to be able to respond back to those comments. So if you still want to put comments on that, feel free to do so. We're going to go over those in our next episode.
And we'll probably do the comments from this video and that video.
Yeah, probably at the same time. We always love going over our fans' comments and stuff. So please leave a comment in this episode if you guys have any questions for us or Charles or anything. So most people at our work cannot keep up with me and Vic talking about the paranormal. But I mean, like, you are one of the rare people that we meet that can actually, like, keep up with us talking about the paranormal.
Well, I mean, yeah, I'm interested in it as well, and I've watched like YouTube videos and read books on it, and it's fascinating because, you know, I grew up seeing things or hearing things, or, you know, you hear all these stories that everybody experiences back home, or you experience those same, you know, paranormal instances yourself. So it's kind of like, yeah, I kind of believe in it because I saw it firsthand, and if anybody tells me different, I'm like, you're wrong.
You know, this leads into one of the questions I always like to ask our guests. Do you remember your first paranormal experience?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, one day I'm sitting there and, you know, I had to babysit my brothers and sisters. Well, I think I was like maybe, hold on, this was maybe about 12, 13 years old. And my brother was playing in the laundry room, and all of a sudden, you know, I'm walking in there, and I look at him, and it looks like he gets thrown into the dryer, like just picked up and thrown. And he comes out, and he gets mad, and he's like, I'm not playing with my friend anymore because he's being mean right now. And I was like, Dad, something's wrong.
Like, you saw him get lifted up and thrown into the dryer?
Yes. Like someone just picked him up and pushed him right into it.
Where was that guy when I was growing up with my sisters, man? It's probably funny now at the time, but probably back then it was probably, like, terrifying. But.
Yeah, it really was. I mean, he was mad, though. Like, he wasn't crying, you know, he wasn't scared. It was just like, I'm not playing with my friend anymore. And I'm like, what kind of friend is this?
Well, first, I'm really glad you didn't turn the dryer on afterwards. But, like, so how did that experience affect you?
Oh, I mean, you know, after that, it just got more and more prominent, you know, hearing things, seeing things, and, you know, it just never went away.
So did you tell your parents about the incident?
I did. Actually, didn't really have to because my dad was standing, like, right behind me, which I didn't know. And I kind of looked at him. I had this look on my face, and he's like, don't worry. It's happened before.
It's happened before where your brother's been picked up and thrown in the dryer?
Pretty much. Well, he wasn't, like, not thrown inside the dryer. He was, like, right against it where it just made, like, a loud boom, you know. You know, like, when you hit metal, if you hit one of the dryers, you know, the distinct sound it makes? That's basically what it was.
Gosh. I'm surprised that he, like, let your dad handle that. My dad probably would not have handled that well. Like, if I came in saying that, like, you know, one of my sisters had been knocked against the washing machine or knocked against the dryer, like, I probably would have been grounded for 2 weeks. He would not have believed. He'd be like, yeah, ghost, whatever.
So did you ever get any other stories about, like, whatever this entity was, other things it had done?
Well, so the house we lived at, it was in our, you know, family for quite some time. There's been stories prior to me seeing that for the first time. You know, one of my earliest stories, and my parents will never, ever stop telling me this, and I'll never stop telling it, too, because it was interesting to me. When I was just a baby in a car seat, you know, my parents and a few of my family members had been drinking, and they decided, you know, hey, we're going to drive out to the house in the middle of winter and get some clothes for everybody. So, because we were staying at, you know, my auntie's house at the time. Well, we get to the house, and they always tell me the same story, and it's always the same account. Everybody would go into the house, and the way it is as soon as you enter the house, there's a laundry room, and then to the right is the kitchen. They placed me on the table, And as they were looking for clothes and stuff that we needed to, kind of get through the winter, my dad said he looks down the hallway and there's, some entity, like he explains it like there's a demon. It like peeks out from the plastic on a door, and when you look down the hallway, I'm gonna give you a visual description. Look down the hallway to the right is the first door to the living room. The second door is the first room, and then the master bedroom is on the right, and all the way back at the end of the hallway is another bedroom, and then to the left is a bathroom. Well, it came out of the master bedroom and peeked out at them, so they got scared. They all ran out. They left me on the table. Well, my mom starts screaming, and she goes, "Oh, we left JR on the table." So they, summon up the courage, I guess, get whatever they have in their trunk, come into the house, and my dad's the first one in, and as soon as he sees me, they all say that there was this golden glow around my carrier or my car seat, whatever it was, and nothing ever touched me. So I guess whatever it was protecting me. I don't know if it was my ancestors, or maybe some kind of divine being, I don't know, but that's the same story I get every single time someone tells me it.
Did they say what the entity actually looked like? I don't know if I actually caught that. Like, what did it look like?
Well, I mean, he was on 2 feet. They didn't really say he had horns or anything, but they said, whatever it was, it had claws, and his face was like disfigured, but they could see the teeth, and that's what scared them was, the claws and the teeth.
Was it like translucent? Was it solid? Do you know?
They got a glimpse of it and really couldn't tell me any description other than that.
They saw teeth and horns and were like, "Time to haul ass."
Yeah,
that's a pretty fascinating story right there. There's a lot to unpack in there too. Mm-hmm. Like a little bit of that divine intervention angle. We've got like a weird creature going on. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, that is. So, you said that you had lived in that home for a good while. So when it came to like paranormal activity, like in the home, different people have different opinions on what it is. Do you think that like there's something with the home that's causing it? Is it with you guys? Is it just daily life? What would you say, or what would your family say would cause the paranormal activity in your home?
Well, so where we live is it's a reservation. It's the landmass the size of Connecticut. And that's the best way I can describe the reservation to you. I mean, you got the east side and the west side, but, no matter what side you're on, you have the same ceremonies going on. And in my opinion, I think what happens out there, we call it basically a spiritual battleground. Because of whatever's out there is called by, our medicine men through these ceremonies. Because when you open up a door, you don't know where that door is going to, And, most of the time they ask, or they tell you that they're calling back the ancestors to give you strength during these ceremonies. But, I'm unsure what can come in or out or through that door that they're opening, because they're just, freely opening these doors during these ceremonies. And it's just like every single time it's pitch black and you're asking for the spirit world to come, or your ancestors from the spirit world to come and be with you. But, in our belief system, there are more things out there, more spiritual beings than anyone else is letting on. So there's a lot of legends that, or, stories that go with that spiritual battleground. And, growing up where I grew up, I'm a converted Lakota, which means I'm Christian. So, I believe in God and what the Bible says, but at the same time I know what I see. I know what I felt while living out there, and you can ask any person that's basically a pastor or a priest that has lived out there or been out there. They can tell you, and they all deduce this, that it is a spiritual battleground. It is so much activity out there that it's I've had people come to me like, "Is this how it is out here?" I'm like, "Yes."
Okay, You can't mention spiritual battleground without totally sucking both of us in.
Yeah, I know.
I want to hear. Although, do you have any other stories kind of like along that vein or anything else you can elaborate on that?
So, during these ceremonies, there are things that happen to you. You are close by each other, but not like where anybody can touch you. And everybody's kind of worried about, basically like if you're in a sweat lodge, you're sitting by them, but they're sitting there praying, and all of a sudden you'll feel like this big hand on the back of your neck, or something push you while you're in there, because during that time they're calling for their ancestors to come, and they're opening that door. So you don't know what's in there, but something does touch you, something grabs you, or you just feel the energy just change. As hot as it gets cold in there.
Do you feel like most people who live on the reservation have like a fair deal of experiences, or do you feel like you experience more than kind of average?
No, everybody has a different story for what happens. I mean, you guys heard the story with my cousin and picking up that strange hitchhiker that disappeared on him in a police car. That one was that.
Actually, would you mind going ahead and telling it for our listeners?
That's a great story.
Oh yeah, so I had gotten off shift. I worked at the jail at the time, and my cousin, he asked me if I wanted to do a ride along with him because it was just him working that night. So I said, yeah, sure. So we go out, and I get tired, and this is about 3 o'clock, and I want to go home. So I tell him, just drop me off, and I'll go get in my car. Well, I get, phone calls and texts throughout the night, and he's telling me to call him. So I did call him. He tells me the story. Like, he gets called out to another community, which is like 30 to 45 minutes away. And when he gets out there, it's a domestic violence call. He says it's unfounded. And as he's coming back, it starts raining. And during this storm that's going on, he sees this woman, walking with a stroller. And in the stroller, I guess, was a baby, because the woman had picked up the baby whenever he pulled over to ask him for a ride. But the woman never said anything to him. He asked, do you want to ride? And she just kind of nods, doesn't really say anything. So he puts her in the back seat of his patrol car. And he puts the stroller into the back of the SUV, and he goes down the road. Well, there's this lookout point that goes out to the Badlands. He goes up to that point, and all of a sudden when he gets close to it, he hears banging on the back of his, I guess, I can't remember the word for it. I'm so sorry.
Back of his patrol car, like
the cage,
yeah,
basically.
The cage,
yeah, the back of the cage.
Yeah, the
sorry.
officer and the person.
Yeah, so the thing that the divider between them was, she was banging on it. So he pulls over. As soon as he gets out to open up the back door, when he opens the back door, she's gone. Baby's gone, stroller's gone. So he gets on the radio and says, hey, that person I picked up that I called in, she's no longer here. So he leaves, and he's driving down the road like 100 miles an hour with his lights and sirens on because he wants to get back after that experience. And I was like, I'm not going on any more ride-alongs with you.
So did you tell the captain what happened? Did you tell a supervisor what happened?
Yeah, he told dispatch, and dispatch kind of said, well, we'll put it in the files, and you know where that's going to go.
Wait, the files?
Well, there's a special form of reports out there that they call the X-Files that, explain strange phenomenon, or they have strange phenomenon that happen to police officers or any of the EMT staff, things like that.
Yeah, I've heard rumors of there being these X-Files on various reservations where they have so many odd stories that the officials get that they just have this own little file for it. And I'm glad to hear that that's true.
So I have a question. So say if you guys are making a report in these X-Files, do you guys have to be very objective when you guys are charting into that or writing in that? Or does it ever get subjective when you guys are charting in anything like that?
I think with any report, it's more more subjective, where this happened. You can't really tell how you felt about the situation. You just put in your report, this happened at this time, person's gone, and that's it. En route back to the main town.
Oh man, there's probably just like a plethora of so many stories that have never been told, like law enforcement.
Oh man, what I wouldn't do to just get a chance to thumb through those files.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy. So you were talking about back home on the reservation and being this spiritual battleground, but you also were talking about, say, like the reservation being the size of Connecticut, and there's like this east and west. Are the practices with these things similar across the reservation? Do they ever differ? And do you think that ever plays into any of the paranormal activity that goes on the reservation?
All the practices are the same because we're the same tribe.
Okay.
But yes, it does play, a huge part into what's out there. I mean, you have various forms of spirits out there. You have, I guess you call them demons. I don't know. There's beings out there that can basically change into different people or different animal types. One for instance was my mom and my grandma and her sister, my mom's sisters. They love to play bingo. So, most every night they go out and play bingo, so they're gone until about 9, 10 at night. Well, one night they're walking on the main road back to town, and it's about a mile just from the highway to the actual community. So they're walking on this road, and this is about summertime. There's this old abandoned house that no one likes to go to because, we hear stories about it. Well, from what all of them have said, and my grandma actually had to go to the hospital because of this. They were chased by something. At first, it started off sounding like, laughing like a clown. They thought it was just someone messing with them. And then all of a sudden, they started hearing just heavy running. So it started growling like it was a bear. Well, it chased them all the way to the first house in the community, and luckily there's a guy that lives there, and he's always outside. No matter what he's doing, he's always outside. I don't know if he's there even to this day. I haven't been home in like 8 years, but they got there. My grandma actually fell about halfway to that house, and she ended up busting her knee pretty good. Well, the guy called the cops. They went to that house. They searched everywhere on the road. They didn't find tracks, didn't find anything, but they swear to this day that they had got chased by something that was not human at all.
So, what's your most intense personal experience with the paranormal? What's the most major defining experience you've had?
Oh, me? There's plenty of things. But there was one that I thought it was someone breaking in, but doors downstairs were locked. But this happened one night when I was with my brothers and sisters. I had to watch them while my dad and them went to the city, and the city's an hour away. Anything you go to, if it's a grocery store, is a long ways away. So they had to do business up there, and they had to go to the grocery store. So it was gonna be a while before they got home. Well, I was there one night, and all the kids went to sleep. It was just me. I was watching movies. All of a sudden, I start hearing stuff going on downstairs. Well, our downstairs was finished at the time, and the kids' rooms were down there, but they weren't down there because they were all sleeping upstairs. Well, I was sitting there waiting. I just hear all this rustling downstairs, and then all of a sudden, I hear someone walking up the stairs. I call my dad. I'm like, hey, someone's downstairs. I kid you not, they're walking up the stairs. So I check, and there's nothing while I'm on the phone with my dad. And, I close the door again because I'm not going down there. Trust me. Heard enough things down there. Not going to do it, especially by myself. Well, while I was waiting for my dad and them, again, all the toys downstairs started going off. And these are the little Care Bears that you have to put your hands together, or you have to, flip a switch for the little cars, and, they would start playing, singing, things like that. They all started going off downstairs. And I knew exactly where those toys were because the kids were playing with them, and we were downstairs at the time. when they were while I was downstairs with them when they were playing before they went to bed. When I was called my dad again. I said, "Where are you guys at?" And he's like, "We're still in the city. We're gonna be in an hour still." I was like, "Oh, okay. I'm just gonna sit here and ignore it." Well, the toys started dying down, but I guess the batteries are dying. But the Care Bears, I don't know. They were singing forever. I don't like Care Bears anymore. So my dad,
I can imagine not.
So my dad gets home and we go downstairs. Well, we find all of the toys sitting on the table where they weren't before. And the doors were locked, windows were locked. No one had been in the rooms, and all the kids were still sleeping. So, I was like, nope. I will babysit, but it'll be during the day.
How do you sleep after something like that? Like, how, like, it's got to be, like, so hard when you have such an intense paranormal encounter like that to, like, get sleep or ground yourself.
It got to a point where we got used to it. You hear things, you see things, you just kind of shrug it off. And a lot of times growing up where I grew up, we smudge, we use sage, we use that for prayer, and we pray to our ancestors. Our deity, which you guys would call our God, we don't consider him a deity. He's more of like our grandfather, our all protector. So we pray to him to watch over us at the time. And and it works. Like, for some reason spirits don't like sage, and that's what had been passed down from our people for generations, so that's what we use. They consider it bad medicine, but also a lot of the spirits, like I said, are called from the ceremonies. But certain houses have been there a while, so you can't really tell or say what has happened during the time, because a lot of times your relatives would pass away and then that house is passed on to you, but there's no story behind it. You just kind of go with all the activity that's going on, and you just get used to it, and never blink twice about it.
Been like, yeah, here's your grandmama's house. Oh yeah, sometimes there may be like a bunch of toys that may go off in the basement and like move around on their own. Yeah, that's our Care Bear. We call him Scary Bear.
Yeah. I'm an intensive care or intensive bear.
So is it kind of like an understood strangeness where everyone kind of knows this stuff goes on?
Yeah, a lot of people, like I said, we pray it away. We use sage to smudge ourselves. Typically nothing happens, but the activity is still there. I mean, it'll die down a little bit, but then it'll come back.
Is it taboo to talk about, or do people just talk about this openly?
I mean, we tell stories all the time. We consider, what happens to us stories. It's not like it's a tall tale or anything that's fictional. We just call them stories. Like anything that happens in your life, anything that is significant enough, we call them stories. So, we speak about it all the time. It's nothing that's not strange to anybody.
Man, like, that's so different from, like, how I grew up and stuff. Like, if something happened in our house, my dad would be like, that's something you keep to yourself. like, don't you embarrass me, like, when we go to the neighbors and we go to your grandparents. Because you tell your grandfather, he's going to be telling all the neighbors, there goes my son, he sees ghosts.
Like, where I grew up, I really think almost everyone was having experiences, but it was kind of like I don't know why, but no one really ever spoke about it. It was kind of a taboo thing to talk about. Like, when I was back home a while ago taking care of Mom, like, I started asking some of the locals about, like, the odd things that they've had happen to them, and almost everyone had a story, but it took a little bit of prying to get anyone to talk about it. It's like everyone had experienced it, but everyone had somehow come to this understanding. We're just none of us are going to talk about it.
I mean, like, that's where, like, the name of our podcast comes from, Talking with Shadows. I mean, the conversations about the paranormal, these are all things people seem to have, but so many people just don't want to admit to them happening. Like, I was talking about, like, I grew up in a family where you didn't really talk about these things, but as an adult, I'm finding out stuff like now, like, my grandmother's house was completely haunted. My mother's interviewing psychics for her high school paper. I'm like, where were all these when I was growing up? None of y'all told me these till I was like 30 years old, full grown man.
Yeah, well, when I moved here, it was like, oh, we don't believe in that. We don't believe in ghosts or Bigfoot.
Yes, they do.
And I'm like, okay, that's your opinion. You're wrong. And That's my opinion. But when I moved here, I noticed that the spiritual realm isn't prevalent here. I don't know if that's the right word to use, but it's not as embodied as it was on a reservation. Like you don't see things or hear things that happen. You don't even hear about certain types of beings or cryptids, things like that, like you would hear on a reservation.
Do you think that has more to do with the ceremonies that go on, or do you think it's just kind of a regional thing? Like, what do you think is the reason behind it?
A lot of stuff for us, it'd be the ceremonies. For here, I think it's just like ignorance, where you get so used to it and so complacent in your life that you don't recognize or even acknowledge that something's going on around you. And most people are like that. They're too busy with their lives that they don't see anything happen. Here it's always go, go, go. There, you have plenty of time to think about what's going on in your life, and then during that thought process, you see things, you hear things, because you're more in tune to notice things around you. Things aren't going as fast. Everything's a lot slower. The days seem longer, but I think that's just what it is people are ignorant or don't even want to acknowledge it.
I love that answer, and here's why. It jives so much with what a lot of people say when they start looking to the paranormal, where before that they hadn't really ever seen anything. Like me, I grew up and I had a lot of experiences early on, and I was exposed to early on, and I would see this sort of stuff. Now, on the other hand, Marcus hadn't really been in that world and hadn't had too many experiences until I started to kind of pull him in. And what's happened since then?
Yeah, I've had like numerous stories to talk about now in the paranormal, and I'm not making any of the stories I ever tell up, just for the sake of conversation on the paranormal on the podcast. I'd fully admit I didn't probably have a real paranormal experience probably until I was like in my 20s and stuff like that. But yeah, when you start looking for the paranormal, taking the time to stop and smell the daisies or stop and smell the roses. When you stop to smell the roses, you start to see the ghosts too, like because it pops out.
Well, that's something similar to what my grandma would say. She would sit there and she'd be like, "Don't poke. Be careful what you poke at, especially in the dark, because you don't know what's going to poke back."
That sounds like some sound advice.
That is very sound advice. That is such a... that's why I always tell people, not to do Ouija boards, too. I know you're probably going to hear a lot of people on the podcast talk about using Ouija boards and stuff, but you never know what you're getting yourself into when you do these sorts of things, and sometimes it may be something that's completely out of your control that you can't handle.
I think that's definitely a possibility. No, I'm not as anti Ouija board. I'm not into Ouija boards. I don't use a Ouija board. But I'm not against the concept of it, but I do acknowledge the danger that is present there.
Yeah.
I just believe that there are times where it may be worth taking the risk if you're the sort of person who's willing to go into something like that. But I do acknowledge that I think there is a legitimate risk when using one.
Charles, be the tiebreaker. Ouija board, yay or nay?
If something like that, calling spirits, we've done it, I'm going to say no.
All right.
I knew that. I knew that was coming.
I know too.
But as the people who've been listening here, you guys know I'm the risk taker out of the group. I'm at the point where, I'm so hungry to piece together some of these loose threads I have that I'll kind of rush into things.
I just think though, if you take the time, you're just gonna have these experiences. I don't know, but again, it's conflicting. It's just differences of opinion on investigating the paranormal, I guess. But
okay, I got another question for you, Charles. What's the most bizarre encounter you've ever had? The most outside the realm of normal?
Well, I was about 15 or 16, and there was a point in my parents' life where we couldn't haul trash, so we put our trash behind the house. Dogs got into it, so they would tear it up, and each day we'd have to clean it up or keep it together at least until we can get someone to come out and get it. One night I was sitting there, I hear a woman laughing outside the house, and again, by myself, a little scared. So I wake up my sister. She's about a year or two younger than me, and I told her, I was like, "There's someone outside the house." I was like, "Stay up with me until Dad and them get back." So she's like, "I don't hear anything." I was like, "Just wait." And all of a sudden, we hear like these footsteps in the back of the house, and it sounds like they got into the basement window because the basement window was broken from my brother at the time. Well, I go to grab my dad's crossbow. It's a hand crossbow, and I want to go outside and check, so I grab my flashlight too. As soon as I go outside and check to see if anything got into that window, I see something jump the fence and start running to the hills. So behind our house, there's a fence that leads to my grandpa's land, and then farther back is about maybe 300 yards of field before it turns into this ravine, and then it goes up into the hills. Well, whatever this was huge. I shot at it with the crossbow, and I guess I hit it because I heard how if something hurt you, you would yell out in pain.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, but it was deeper, like a louder, deeper sound. I run back in the house and I tell my sister, like, lock the doors. We're putting something against us, and I'm calling Dad because I think Bigfoot was just outside. Call my dad, and I let him know what happened. He's like, it's probably because all that trash is out there. And I was like, yeah, I'm guessing that's what it was, but I'm not. I have the door blocked, so when you get here, knock on the door and I'll unblock it.
The man who shot Bigfoot with a crossbow.
First off, thank you so much for telling that story, because so many times when I have heard stories of the paranormal, I am just so surprised when the story doesn't involve, and then I pulled out my gun. Now, you did it with flair because you pulled out a crossbow, so good on you, sir.
Well, thank you. These were crossbows. They were little handheld crossbows that we got, and you can hold them in one hand. They're those little activity ones you can shoot, but they can shoot pretty hard, and they still have a sharp tip on them. My dad got some from our pastor at the time, and we would use them to keep coyotes, or even if a mountain lion came across, we would use them for that, because mountain lions, the grass is tall and they're the same color, so you kind of need to protect yourself while you're out there.
Like some Assassin's Creed stuff right there. Pull out your crossbow to shoot a Bigfoot. That's awesome. So, do you guys have a lot of Bigfoot encounters out there on the reservation?
Yeah, we have. It seems like almost every day or every week we have stories, and it's not just our family. It's families across the community. The way it works out there is we have districts out there. There's like 9 districts, I believe. And if you think of districts like the Hunger Games, that's basically it. Like, we're all like that. We have our own representatives, things like that, because we have our own government. But you hear stories all the time, and a lot of our elders basically say that they're just spirits. They're taking physical form. They're here to protect us, or they're here to protect something, whether it be nature itself, or even ceremonies, or even our people. They're there to watch over us. They think they're spirits of our ancestors just taking physical form.
I thought you said it weekly Bigfoot sightings.
And a lot of times you hear something. I mean, you walk out and like, hey, this happened or this happened, and you're like, oh yeah, same thing happened to us.
That's a lot of Bigfoot encounters.
Oh yeah,
yeah. Like, so typically, what is the typical behavior like in most of these stories, like on the reservation? Like, is he just rooting through garbage? Is he just minding his own business? Are they more aggressive? Like, what are typical stories like on the reservation of Bigfoot?
Well, when growing up, we were told to keep an eye out for them. For their behavior near us, they like garbage. They like when, dare I say it, women on their moon. That's what we call it, I guess, when they're on their period.
Oh, okay, I've caught up now.
Yeah, so, but yeah, we were always told by our elders to watch out for the 3-toed versus the 5-toed. The 5-toed are not as aggressive, but the 3-toed, they can attack you and they eat meat. So keep an eye out between the two. If you see tracks, if you see 3-toed, go back home right away.
So there's two distinct versions of Bigfoot on the reservation: 5-toed and 3-toed.
Yes.
Okay. Like which one are more common? Would you say that people see?
The 5-toed are more common. 3-toed are the ones you would hear from like the farmers or ranchers that are out there, or people that have livestock. They get animal attacks all the time. So one story happened near our community. One of the ranchers was out there, and he had some pretty dogs. They're all German shepherds. I think he had one Labrador. I don't know, or maybe it was a mutt. Anyway, these dogs are gorgeous. I've seen them, and well, he came down pretty distraught one day. He came into town and he told one of our elders that something was near his house, and this happened near dusk. So light was still out, but he says he sees someone running away from his barn. So he lets the dogs out. When the dogs start chasing him, they chase it over the hill towards his fence line. And when they get over the hill, he starts hearing his dogs start screaming in pain, yelping. Well, as soon as he gets over the hill, he finds the dogs' heads on his poles, and the bodies were nowhere to be seen. But he said the footprints were 3-toed.
Wow. So do you guys call like Bigfoot, or do you guys have another name for him?
The Lakota name, I can't remember. If I had to say anything, I think it's Sitanka, which is Bigfoot.
Gotcha. Do you guys have a different word for 3-toed versus 5-toed, or is it just
no? It's the same thing. The 3-toed are a little bit shorter from what I remember, but that's the only difference besides the number of appendages on his feet.
Do they believe that both the 3-toed and the 5-toed are both like spirits or guardians or something? But or is one like different than the other?
With the elders, like I said, they believe that they are our ancestors, or here to protect us. So I think the 3-toed are to be more aggressive. It's kind of like how you have your army versus your diplomatic people. If your diplomacy doesn't work, then you send in your army.
Gotcha.
And
So
I figured
that
that's how the
makes sense.
spirits are.
All right. So they have like different roles in the war and stuff. Okay. All right. So we sent out a 5-toed Bigfoot running through garbage. It's not working. Time to send in the 3-toed.
So in our channel, we really like to talk about like shadow people and black-eyed kids. So I want to know, are those encounters? Do encounters like that occur on the reservation?
The only thing I can think of as far as shadow people is a tall man. My mom has seen him. She actually had to call the cops on him one time. There's this cabin that's behind our house in those fields, and whatever this was, it wasn't a Bigfoot, because she said whatever it was had a hat on, and it looked like it had a trench coat. But there's a light behind the cabin that you can see. No one lives out there, but the light was always on for some reason. I don't know, but it was one of those big light poles that you see like on a street lamp.
Mm-hmm.
Well, she was outside one day because it's summertime. You don't stay inside, if you don't have to, because nighttime is cooler. Well, when she said she looked back there was a tall man standing right by the cabin, and it was just standing above where the roof of the cabin met, and he was taller than that. And she didn't think it was a Bigfoot, but she just remembers that it was, started walking away. I guess it noticed her watching him, because she came in and called my dad. My dad came out, and he didn't see anything, but she did. And that's the only, you see shadow things all the time, but that's the only thing that I can remember.
That's really yeah. I wouldn't think that to be a Bigfoot, because usually when you think of Bigfoot, you think of something big and robust. Mm-hmm. And this sounds like it was like almost like a Slender Man sort of thing.
Story, yeah.
Well, I think we're about out of time for the open portion.
Yeah, this has been just such an awesome interview to just talk to somebody who has a completely different perspective of the paranormal than like what like what I'm used to and a lot of other people are used to.
Like, I gotta ask, Charles, I know you have more stories than this. If we invite you back on another day, would you consider coming back?
Yeah, and since we're out of time, I forgot to tell you the story about the sweat lodge.
Hang on one second, because there is a little bit more. So this is the end of our regular episode. So if anybody is interested in catching the rest of this episode, go over to our Patreon and sign up for our Patreon. And when you become a patron, you get all the extended portions of all of our podcasts. So, and you're going to be able to get to hear some more stories from Charles. But just for now, Charles, though, we want to thank you at this point in the podcast. Thank you so much for coming onto the podcast, though.
Oh, absolutely. No problem. I'm happy to be here.
Absolutely. But for now, guys, keep believing.
Because we'll keep listening.
All right. So let's dive into some more stories.
Okay. I want to give a little bit of history on this one, just kind of as a setup. Charles started to tell us this story a few days ago, and we were listening to it, and he had me right on the edge of my seat, and it took all my willpower to pull myself together to go, okay, stop telling me this, because this is an amazing story. I want you to tell this on the channel, and I want to be hearing it for the first time there. So I stopped him before we finished, and I'm a really curious person. I do not like stopping in the middle of a good story.
So to wait several days to hear the story.
So that's just for you patrons out there. Yeah. I pulled my stuff together.
I'm like, we want our reactions to be natural here. So, Charles, if you would, good sir.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So this comes from our family. It happened to one of my grandmothers. She was at her house watching kids one night. Well, it was about dusk. She had her trailer out in the country, and by the trailer, they had their sweat lodge. Well, she came out, and the kids were playing in the sweat lodge, so she started yelling at them, like, get out of there, get out of there. You're not supposed to be playing that. That's bad medicine. The kids didn't really listen, and while she was telling them that, the dogs just go crazy. They start barking. They, going crazy, growling, barking, whatever you could think of. They just became really aggressive. And as she was looking at them, she looked at where they were pointed, and they were looking on top of the hill. And on top of the hill, there was this man standing there. And as she was watching him, she saw this tail come out. And she could see it moving. Well, the man started walking towards the trailer. So she starts yelling at her kids. She says, Takojas, come on, get inside right now. And Takojas is Lakota for grandchildren.